Hello and welcome back to Ask Literature. If you're passionate about exploring the fascinating world of literary theory, then you're in the right place. Today, we're diving into one of the most intriguing and essential frameworks for understanding literature, narratology. This is a theory that has changed the way we interpret stories, their structure, and their deeper meanings. But what exactly is narratology and why does it matter so much when analyzing text? Let's unravel this concept together. Narratology is essentially the study of narrative and narrative structure. In other words, it's the discipline that helps us understand how stories are told, how they're constructed, and how their elements interact to create meaning. The origins of narratology can be traced back to the early 20th century, though its formal recognition as a distinct area of study didn't happen until later with the rise of structuralism in the 1960s. But what makes narratology unique is its application across all forms of storytelling, whether it's a novel, a film, a poem, or even an oral tradition. Now let's break down the basic idea here. Narratology doesn't focus on what a story is about, but rather on how that story is structured. Imagine you're reading a book. Narratology asks questions like who is telling the story, how the events ordered, what narrative techniques are being employed to manipulate space or character development. These are the questions that help uncover the framework beneath the surface of the story. So why is this important? Well, understanding narrative structure changes the way we engage with text. For example, when we consider how an author chooses to reveal information, whether it's through a linear timeline, a fragmented structure, or flashbacks, we start to see that these decisions are deliberate. They shape the way the reader experiences the story. Without this awareness, we risk missing out on the layers of meaning an author may be trying to communicate through their storytelling choice. One of the most influential figures in narratology is Russian formalist Vladimir Prop, whose work in the early 20th century laid foundational groundwork. Prop studied Russian folktales and broke them down into recurring narrative elements or functions which he believed could be applied to any story. By categorizing these functions, Prop was able to show that beneath the surface, many stories share similar structural components. This approach shifted focus from the individual story to the structures that shape all stories, which became a core idea in narratology. But Prop wasn't the only one contributing to this theory. French structuralist Roland Barthes also played a key role. Barthes viewed narratives as systems of signs much like language that could be decoded and understood by studying their structure. He argued that narrative is not a natural phenomenon, but something constructed through a specific set of rules and conventions. Barthes believed that by analyzing these structures, we could uncover hidden meanings within the text that might not be immediately apparent. The evolution of narratology didn't stop with structuralism though. In fact, the post-structuralist movement brought with it new ways of thinking about narrative. Figures like Gerard Genette expanded upon earlier ideas and introduced the concept of narrative levels, distinguishing between the story itself, the events that occurred, the narrative discourse, the way the story is told, and the act of narrating, the telling of the story. These distinctions allow us to explore not only what is told, but also how and why it is told in a particular way. Genette's work was particularly influential in creating the concept of focalization, which refers to the perspective through which a story is viewed. In other words, who sees the events and how do they perceive them? This is crucial in understanding how different characters or narrators co-enhance the reader's interpretation of the story. A shift in focalization can change the entire meaning of a narrative, and narratology helps us to identify when and how these shifts occur. One of the fascinating things about narratology is its adaptability. It's not limited to just novels or written stories. In today's world, narratology can be applied to digital media, films, and even video games. Think about how many movies use flashbacks or nonlinear timelines techniques that add complexity to the story. Or consider a video game where the player controls the character's actions. The way these narratives unfold can all be analyzed through the lens of narratology. We also can't forget about contemporary thinkers who have taken narratology into new and exciting directions. For instance, scholars like Iqbal have emphasized the importance of cultural context in the study of narrative. She argued that understanding narrative involves more than just structure, it also requires an examination of how cultural and social forces shape the stories we tell. This allows us to see narratology as not just a technical analysis, but as a tool to understand broader human experiences and cultural values. At its core, narratology is about breaking down stories to see how they work, what makes them tick, so to speak. It allows us to step back and appreciate the craftsmanship behind storytelling, whether it's an ancient folktale or a modern novel. By understanding the structure of a narrative, we gain insight into how authors manipulate time, perspective, and plot to influence the reader's experience. And that's what makes narratology such an essential tool for literary analysis. So the next time you pick up a book or watch a movie or play a game, think about how the story is structured. Who is telling it? How is it told? What techniques are being used? And how does all of this condense or ask-nouns your experience as the audience? Narratology gives us the tools to ask these questions, and in doing so deepens our engagement with the art of storytelling. Thanks for joining me in this exploration of narratology. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about literary theories or have suggestions for future topics, feel free to comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Ask Literature for more in-depth discussions on literary topics. Until next time, happy reading.